So you guys are ready to get into the Gauntlet and you need a build for it. Well, let's go over the meta builds for all of the different weapons you'll be playing Gauntlet with, starting with the axe. These builds are going to be builds you're going to want to tweak and change as you go through various levels of the Gauntlet, depending on the modifiers for that round. So keep that in mind. Not everything in this build is set in stone. Depending on your party structure for the Gauntlet too, you might want to switch out Overpower for Knockout King if you need a little bit more stagger damage to keep the Behemoth staggered lock. This all depends on your party structure going in. That's why I went out of the way to make sure that the Overpower in this build was not hard set into the build so that you can tweak the build relatively easy to adapt to different situations and different party structures with you and your guild. So let's dive down in and check out what we're running for this build. All right, first up, we are running the Existential Crisis, the Chronivore Axe. For this build, we're going to be using a +3 pulse and +3 overpower as the default for this build. For the special, we are going to be running Grim Onslaught as well as the mod Overcharged Cylinder. For the bond, we are going with Edge of Dawn. This gives you +3 cunning and a 12% chance to attack twice. Now, this is the Rezakiri weapon if you're unfamiliar with this particular weapon. For the Omnicell baseline, we're going with Iceborne, and normally I would set this build up with Galvanize, but since Toxic Shields is the modifier this season, the new modifier this season, running Galvanize and Bastion is not going to be a good idea, or running Galvanize and the Skarn's Lantern isn't going to be a good idea for every situation. So we're going to default to Iceborne with this build. If you're more familiar with the weapon you're playing and more familiar with Gauntlet, I would suggest changing this out for either Revenant or Discipline, depending on what modifiers are in that round. Revenant is not going to be good for certain modifiers, as well as Discipline is not going to be good for certain modifiers. So keep that in mind. If you guys are pushing the first 100 levels or so, you should be able to get away with Iceborne perfectly fine. You're not going to need the extra damage from those other cells, but if you want to clear them out faster, definitely switch out for Revenant or Discipline. For the Lantern, I'm going to give you guys two options here. You can either run Skarn's Defiance when Toxic Shields is not a thing, or you can run Pangar's Lantern. You can run Shrek's Zeal. You can pretty much run any Lantern. It's really going to be situationally dependent on this one. I like to default to Skarn's Lantern for most things because the damage is going to follow you, and even though the Behemoth is going to be staggered locked, they have some Behemoths that just bounce around a lot when you're staggering them every 3 to 4 seconds, you know? For the cell in this, though, we are going to go with +3 Catalyst. You can run other things other than Catalyst. You can run Etheric Attunement in the builds if you want to run Etheric Attunement. You can run Reuse, at least have one person with +6 Reuse in the party. Doesn't hurt you in the lower levels, but at the higher levels of Gauntlet, you are going to need to run +6 Catalyst. Just keep that in mind. You don't need it for the first like 50, 60 levels. You might need it beyond that. You're definitely going to need it when you get into the upper 200s though. Well, for the helmet, we're going with the Dark Watch. This is going to give us +3 cunning, and we're going to put in a +3 overpower cell. For the chest, we're going with Shravewing's Jacket. This gives us +3 adrenaline, and we're going to put a +3 endurance cell in there. For the gloves, we've got Fiery Gauntlets. This gives us +3 endurance, and we're going to put a +3 pulse cell in there. And for the boots, we're going with the Shravewing Boots. This gives us +3 adrenaline, and we're going to put a +3 catalyst cell in there. Now, like I was saying, it really is dependent on what you are doing with the build, what round and modifier you are on. I do believe that you're going to outpace this build by using Galvanize, but in some situations, especially this season with Toxic Shields, you're not going to want to run Galvanize and be stacking up shields. But the pulse is in the weapon and the pulse is in the gloves. So you can completely change that out to Galvanize on the fly for situations where you're not running into Toxic Shields or other things that are going to be rapidly depleting your shields like push-pull. So just some things to keep that in mind. If you want to optimize the build, you can definitely optimize the build by running Galvanize over Pulse in situations where stacking up shields is an option. Remember, the goal of Gauntlet is going to be to keep the Behemoth staggered as much as possible, and a staggered Behemoth is not going to be depleting your shields, so you're going to get a pretty hefty amount of crit hit chance off of Galvanize, which should help you push your crit chance over that of every 5 hits, especially with Axe. So for the perk breakdown, we have +6 Adrenaline. This gives you 3% damage for every 10 stamina you have missing. +6 Catalyst, 60% tonic effectiveness and duration. This is very, very helpful, and that's going to make the assault tonics we're running do quite a bit of stagger damage and keep that behemoth on the floor for you guys. +6 cunning. This is going to give you 10% critical strike chance as well as 30% critical strike damage. Then we've got +6 endurance. This is going to give you 100 stamina, which is going to break down to 30% more damage because of adrenaline. And it's going to be pretty easy in Gauntlet to keep your stamina down with Axe, because the behemoth is going to be staggered the majority of the time, so you're not going to have to run around and worry about your stamina regenning because you're not attacking enough. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. It is definitely a playstyle you're going to have to get used to, but I definitely recommend you try out this type of playstyle with the Axe. The damage on it is very, very good and very sustainable. And then we've got +6 overpower. This gives you 40% more damage versus staggered behemoths, and we know the behemoth is going to be on the floor 90% of the time while you guys are doing Gauntlet if you are running the builds that I'm providing for Gauntlet. Then we've got +6 pulse. Every 5th hit of your weapon is going to be a critical strike, and it gives you 15% more critical strike damage. And like I said earlier, you can switch this out for galvanize if you want during rounds that are not push-pull or toxic shields. For the tonic breakdown, we're going to be running Blitz, Frenzy, and Assault tonic. The reason we're running Blitz is for the extra attack speed, just to help us amp up the damage more. Frenzy tonic to increase our overall damage, and the Assault tonic is going to be for that 50% increased stagger damage. Depending on your party structure, you might want to switch out the Assault tonic, but for the most part, I find the Assault tonic works out pretty well with this, and you're not going to gain that much damage over the Assault tonic by going with the Ether Drive tonic. But if your party has enough stagger damage that you do not need everybody to be running Assault tonics, I would run the Ether Drive tonic. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, guys. If you're looking for more builds for Gauntlet, I'm going to be posting a meta build guide for every weapon for Gauntlet, including 2 for Warpike, because Warpike we're both going to be doing the support build and the non-support build for it, because support for Warpike is really important, I feel, in Gauntlet. It's a very useful playstyle to have one person in your party running for Gauntlet this season. It's actually the weapon I main for Gauntlet right now is going to be the support Warpike build that I'm going to be doing the video on. If you guys have any other questions about Gauntlet, let me know in the comment section down below. Also, if you guys have a particular weapon you'd like to see the next video on for Gauntlet, let me know in the comment section down below, and I will try to prioritize whichever ones you guys are looking for the most right now. Kind of push off some of the less popular weapons that people want to get into Gauntlet with. And if you guys are looking for a video that explains kind of the basic idea of Gauntlet, I will have a video over this way somewhere for you guys to watch. It kind of summarizes the idea behind Gauntlet and some of the lesser known facts about Gauntlet for people who are just stepping into Gauntlet for the first time. And we'll see you guys in the next video.